Hey friends, it's Molly and welcome to the WTF Podcast. I am on a mission to equip 1 million people with the tools to recognize when they're in the funk and, more importantly, how to pivot out of it. And today I want to get real about a very specific kind of funk, the funk of parenting adult-ish kids. You know, that weird stage where they are technically grown, but they're still figuring out what it means to launch into adulthood and do that adulting thing. Maybe they're in college, maybe they're not. Maybe they're working, or maybe they're still exploring. But either way, they're making choices that feel big. And as parents, we are just learning how to show up in a different way. This funk has been about shifting from director to guide and learning that my job isn't about running interference anymore. It's to ask questions, listen, and support without imposing. And let me tell you, it's fucking hard. Now, let me back up for a minute. I'm a Gen Xer, raised by boomer parents. My parents divorced when I was 12, and both of them worked. So, like a lot of us in the 80s, independence wasn't optional. It was just baked into how we grew up, right? We were out until the streetlights came on. We were riding bikes across town, drinking from the hose, staying at friends' houses without a million check-ins. That's just how it was. And that kind of upbringing shaped a sense of resilience and grit. We didn't always have to have somebody swooping in. We had to figure things out for ourselves. But when I became a mom, I wanted to do for my kids in ways that I didn't have done for me. For example, rides to and from school, rides to and from activities, those were just covered. I made sure that those were covered. The kids had new clothes at the beginning of the year. They always had food in the pantry or on the table. If they wanted to try a new activity, my husband and I figured out a way to make it work. And during that season, especially in those like middle school and high school years for my boys, I was climbing the corporate ladder. And in the rush of life, I often found myself doing for them instead of letting them figure it out. Not because they couldn't, but because it was faster and easier for me to just do it. And also, I wanted to make sure that they didn't feel the lack that I felt. Now, looking back, that meant fewer natural consequences, fewer chances to build the grit that I had to build on my own. It was like in the movie Blindside. I was playing left tackle, running interference to protect them from every hit. Now they're older. It's what I like to call adult-ish. Technically, they're adults. My boys are almost 19 and 21, but they're in that season of trying to figure out life. And both of my boys are on non-traditional paths. And here's the funk that I find myself in. I can't play left tackle anymore. I can't be the parent who says, here's what you should do. I have to be the parent who says, what do you want? Why does it matter to you? And how are you going to feel when you get it? But let me tell you, friends, my muscle memory still has me wanting to jump in. Just going to be honest. To offer advice, to point to the quote unquote safe path, to say, here's what worked for me, so this is what you should do. And I have to stop myself because my perspective is colored from the world that I grew up in, not the one that they are stepping into. And that's the funk. The funk is realizing that my job isn't to direct anymore, it's to guide. And sometimes to simply hold space without saying a word. Part of what makes this funk real is how different the landscape looks for our kids. Nearly 60% of Gen Z believe that the traditional 9 to 5 won't get them where they want to go financially. And over half of them don't even think it's necessary for success. More than half are exploring freelancing, gig work, and entrepreneurship instead of the traditional corporate jobs. And yes, 77% of Gen Z job seekers have actually brought their parent to an interview. Now, I have never done this. And if you ever catch me showing up at one of my boys' interviews, you have my full permission to smack me upside the head. Okay. Now, I'm kidding, of course, but the parents of those 77%, yeah, They may need this episode, so please share it. The young adults today are building a very different version of adulthood. They're more entrepreneurial. They're more flexible. They're more focused on creating the life that they love, even if it looks non-traditional from our vantage point. And as parents, that shift can feel really, really scary because it's unfamiliar, because we don't have this playbook. And because our instinct is to measure their success against the milestones we grew up believing mattered. So, what's the funk here? The funk is in the in between wanting to protect them and needing to let go, between pushing our perspective and making space for theirs, between telling them what to do and guiding them with questions and holding space for the answers that they come up with. It's messy. It is uncomfortable AF, but it forces us to grow right alongside our kids. So here are a few things that I am trying to do as I'm navigating through this funk. And I'm going to tell you, friends, I am not perfect. Okay. So the first thing is I check myself before I react. My kids still look at me to gauge my reaction. So before I speak, I've got to pause and remind myself that my feelings are mine and they don't have to become the weight my kids carry. I've got to separate my story from theirs. For me, at their age, stability meant a 9-to-5 job, a college degree, and employer-funded health insurance. For them, it may look like flexibility, creativity, multiple streams of income, different path, but same goal, supporting themselves and doing something that they love that energizes them. The third thing is I'm trying to do here in this season of funk is to lead with curiosity. Guiding in this season doesn't mean laying out the path for them. It means asking the kind of questions that help them uncover their path. Not easy. Not easy as a parent. And this last one probably is the most difficult for me, is to resist the rescue. If they stumble, and actually it's really when they stumble, I've got to let them. It doesn't mean that I don't care. It just means that I need to trust them enough to figure it out. And that trust actually builds more confidence than any advice I could give. So if you're in this same season with me, here's the encouragement. You're not alone. I'm standing with you. Parenting adult-ish kids means releasing the playbook that we grew up with and leaning into curiosity, trust, and presence. It's not about stepping in. It's actually about stepping back. It's about moving from left tackle to sideline cheerleader, even when your instinct is to run on the field. And maybe, just maybe, that's the growth that we're meant to experience as parents in this season. Thanks for being here with me today. And if you know a parent of young adults who could use this message, would you share this episode with them? That's how we're going to spread the word and move closer to my mission of equipping 1 million people with the tools to recognize when they're in the funk, and more importantly, how to pivot out of it. See you next time.